Hey, how's it going? And welcome to another video. So, man, Jojolion ended. It feels kind of surreal even saying that. Like, Jojolion has been a weird kind of fixture of my life for, God, literally almost the past 10 years. Like, I got into JoJo's Bizarre Adventure back in 2012 with the Part 1 and Part 2 anime. God, where did my youth go? I've been into this series for almost 10 years, God. But yeah, it really is the end of an era, man. Like, when Jojolion started, the Part 1 and 2 anime did not exist. And now here we are awaiting Part 6's anime to get released. And in a way, it almost feels like kind of a chapter in my own life has closed, just because, like, you know, for years and years and years and years, like, I would constantly get asked, when are you making a video about Jojolion? When's the Jojolion video? Are you reading Jojolion? What do you think about Jojolion? And my answer was pretty much always, yeah, I'll finish it when it's done. You know, way back in the day, like, after I had finished watching the Part 2 anime, though, like, the Part 3 anime didn't exist at the time, so I did what any sensible human would do, and I read the manga. So I read the manga. This was a project throughout, like, the better part of 2013. I read the manga from Part 3 to 7, and finally ended up at Part 8, which, you know, at the time had been out for about 2 years, so there was a decent bit to kind of sink my teeth into. And at least with me and Jojolion, like, I always went through these kind of phases with it where at some points I would be like really interested in what was going on. And I would read it pretty much every month when it came out, and then I would go through these lulls where I just found that I didn't really care. I think it was about 2/3-ish of the way through its run where I was like, yeah, I think I'll just wait until it's done to like really read through it. And I think I'm gonna kind of look back on Jojolion as a very interesting example of like, how do I explain this? Almost like manga reading culture? Because I feel like in a way, part of Jojolion like discourse almost revolved around if people were reading it monthly or not. Because for every person who I think was reading it monthly who was like, oh my god, you gotta read it monthly, dude, it's like, you gotta read it monthly. There were just as many people who were like, yeah, I don't know, there's no main antagonist yet, I'll read it when it's done. The Virgin reading it month to month. The Chad waiting 10 years. But yeah, at least when it came to me and Jojolion, I think I felt a certain lack of, like, urgency when it came to reading it. It wasn't really the kind of thing where I was, like, dying to find out what happens every chapter. And so when it was announced, like, a month ago that the thing was ending, it kind of took me by surprise, because it was like, first of all, it just felt so surreal knowing, yeah, Jojolion is, like, ending. And also, it was like, oh fuck, it's ending. Like, now I gotta read it. So that's been my project for the past 2 days, is just reading up on, like, all the Jojolion shit that I missed out on. Man, where do you even begin? I guess I'll start with the characters. So, I think, at least for me, one of the bigger kind of, like, reasons why I wasn't reading Jojolion super actively really just had to do with the fact that there really wasn't that many characters that I was, like, super crazy about. Which is weird, considering, like, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure has some of my all-time favorite characters from anything ever. You know, Josuke, part 4 Josuke is in contention for being, like, quite literally my favorite character ever. And beyond just him, you have characters like, you know, Rohan, Polnareff, Speedwagon, Kira Yoshikage, Funny Valentine, like Johnny, Koichi. It's just this never-ending laundry list of characters that I love dearly. And I think that's part of why I wasn't, like, super keeping up with Jojolion, really was just because there wasn't that character that I was, like, really dying to see every month. But I think now that I've read through the whole thing and I've kind of, like, you know, it's over, so anything that's happened involving these characters is pretty much over with. Unless they show up again in Part 9, but it's pretty safe to say that for most of these characters, their stories are kind of over. But to talk about our man Josuke, I liked Josuke. I would say he's definitely not one of my favorite JoJos, but I like him. I think when it comes to Josuke, I'm kind of in this weird dilemma where I think I'm a lot more kind of attached to the two people that make up Josuke than I ever was, like, Josuke himself. I think pretty unquestionably, like, my favorite parts of Jojolion was the stuff involving Kira and Josefumi. I found that shit to be super, super compelling, but I like Josuke enough. I think he's fine. Like, the mystery surrounding his existence is really interesting. He has some pretty funny moments. I think he has a lot of pretty funny relationships with a lot of different characters, but yeah, I don't know what it is. Something about the guy just doesn't quite click with me. but I thought he was fine. Yasuho is a character that definitely started to grow on me, like, towards the end of the story. I like her relationship with Josuke and the Higashikata family a lot. And speaking of the Higashikata family, I really like them. I thought it was really interesting having, like, Josuke's allies be kind of like, you know, the accumulation of the sort of main characters are an actual family instead of just, like, a ramshackle accumulation of people. Pretty much every other part, all the JoJo's allies are just like, they're just random dudes, right? Like, yeah, in part 3, like, Joseph and Jotaro are together, or in part 6, like, Jolene and Jotaro are together. But I think having kind of, like, the core group more or less be a family, I thought was pretty neat. And I also really enjoyed the family's, like, interconnected relationships and just the fact that, like, they all don't see eye to eye. Norisuke was really cool. I really like that guy a lot. Dai is really cute. Joshu is interesting. I don't know, Joshu, he strikes this fascinating blend between, like, being so fucking punchable, but, like, he never really reached this point for me where I, like, wanted him out of the story. And then there's my fucking dude, Jobin. I really like Jobin. I think I like Jobin as, like, the main antagonist more than I like the actual main antagonist. Since I really liked his overall kind of philosophy and view on life and, like, his relationship with the rest of his family compared to his own son. Whereas his dad is more or less content where the business is, Jobin is like, fuck you, man, we're gonna reach the top. Like, in life, the people that win are the ones that are right, you know? That little bit of kind of, like, Diego Brando mentality in him, I thought was really cool. And then you have, like, you know, Tsurugi, who's allied with Jobin, and then you have, you know, Jobin's mom, who's a part of their little trifecta. I thought all that was awesome. Like, the kind of interconnectivity of the Higashikata family and their different beliefs on stuff, that really does stand out as being, like, some of my favorite writing of the part. But the characters kind of working in tandem with the overall story and the mystery of it, like, I think this is probably the most complicated, like, it definitely is the most complicated part that Araki has written. The storytelling in JoJo, I think it progressively gets more intricate. Like, it starts out, good Jonathan Man fights evil Dio Vampire Man, right? And it gradually gets more complicated until you end up at Steel Ball Run, which is like this really intricate story about different characters all vying for the same thing. In this race across America with all these characters having different beliefs and objectives and, like... And then Jojolion takes it to a new level, having, you know, not only characters that are all with different goals vying for the same thing, like, you have multiple different mysteries going on, kind of piled on top of that. You have the mystery of, like, who is Josuke? What is the Rokakaka? Who are the rock people? What's going on with all the secrets of the Higashikata family? And I think that mystery aspect does kind of, like, play back into what I was talking about of, like, should you have read this monthly? Like, obviously it's too fucking late now, but I think that is a legitimately kind of interesting thing to debate about, is, like, is it better to experience, you know, a monthly, like, really mystery and story-oriented manga kind of as it comes out to sort of go on the ride with people? Or is it better to kind of go through it straight and be able to look at it through, you know, a retrospective lens more easily and say, like, yeah, this was the totality of it, and, like, have the ability to kind of be removed from, like, I don't know, the anxiety of monthly releases, I guess? And looking back, like, you know, I'm sure Hamon Beat will have a fucking video about this, but, like, there's definitely some stuff in this that Araki failed to follow up on. I would kind of make the argument that a lot of it doesn't super matter in the grand scheme of things, but, you know, Flashback Man is definitely one that comes to mind. Like, Flashback Man is somebody that people have been talking about for fucking goddamn 8 or 9 years at this point. Never brought up, never mentioned, never explained. But yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of shit throughout the part that, like, people are going to be able to kind of look back on and go, huh, what about this thing? Or, wait, this wasn't explained. So I guess now's another chance to kind of bring up another, one of the most constant facets of kind of Jojolion discussion, like, at least a couple of years ago, was the whole, I'll get into it when there's a main antagonist thing. And I think that kind of speaks to just, like, the fucking power of Araki's, like, main antagonists, just how memorable and kind of beloved they all are, that people were willing to not even fucking read a part until it had the, like, that bad guy. And at least for me, I think a big part of the reason why, like, I wasn't super keen on reading it monthly was kind of the lack of not necessarily a main antagonist, but just like a sort of sense of direction, if that makes sense. Like, obviously now I have the power of hindsight to be able to go read through 10 years worth of shit in a couple of days, but back when it was first kind of being published, I think Jojolion definitely, at least to me, it had a sense of like aimlessness. And aimlessness is totally fine. Like, part 4 is my favorite part, without a doubt, and it is sort of an aimless story at times. But I think it fit the, you know, small town, kind of like villain of the week setup it had. And at least for me, when I was reading Jojolion way back in the day, that sort of aimlessness almost gave me, like, anxiety about reading it. And I guess that really just depends on kind of your own experience with Jojolion. For some people, it's like, dude, I have no idea where this is going. This is awesome. And for some people, it was like, I don't know where this is going. Send help. But one of the absolute peaks of my enjoyment when it came to Jojolion was the stuff involving Damo. Like, when Damo showed up, I think most of us were kind of under the assumption that, like, yeah, this is him. This is our bad guy. Because Damo was so fucking scary, dude. Like, he had such an interesting design of being this, like, kind of tubby, like, weirdly shaped dude, who also managed to be really fucking scary. Like, Vitamin C was such a terrifying stand. The shit that he did to the Higashikata household was so fucked up. And I think for a lot of people reading, it was kind of like, all right, cool. We have kind of a guy to focus our attention on and be like, yeah, this is our bad guy. This is who we're pursuing. But he's the big shit. And the chapter where Damo died, I very specifically remember that was where I kind of took my hiatus from Jojolion. I remember, like, after that chapter, I almost felt something, like, sink in me. At least to me, it kind of felt like, okay, the story is focused now, right? Like, we have our dude, we have our kind of objective, you know, we have the thing that we're after, right? And once he died, I kind of felt like, oh no, now we have to go back to, like, me not knowing where the story is going. And not knowing is scary. But looking back, I think it all kind of worked out fine. Like I said, this really is a hindsight kind of thing, but I do wish I could have gone back and told myself, like, it's okay, man. Like, trust me. They'll get refocused on something in a bit. But to talk about the antagonists of Jojolion more broadly, the rock humans, I think they're fine. I will say, I think the rock humans just, like, conceptually are really, really interesting. Just the idea of, like, yeah, whereas humans are carbon-based life forms, there also exist these silicon-based rock people. I thought that was really interesting. Like, they're kind of like the Pillarmen in a way, except whereas the Pillarmen are like these unstoppable god beings, the rock humans are just different. So I thought that was interesting, the idea of this sort of subspecies lurking in the shadows, trying, like, who have infiltrated human society. I thought that was really cool. Dude, poor Tom is one of the craziest fucking characters ever. You see him at first and you think he's like a smoking baby, but it turns out he's actually like an old dude. And he starts talking to Jobin, and the fucking poor Tom notices this chick and he's like, you see that babe? Damn, she's bending over, bruh. And then you see him a while later and he's eating pussy? Like, what the fuck? So yeah, poor Tom was fascinating. Like, I've already talked about Damo. Damo I thought was really, really good. And then we have the big man himself, Toru. And I'm not sure how I feel about Toru. I definitely think he's kind of on the lower echelon of antagonists for me. It's kind of funny to think that, like, I like Jobin and Damo more as being the main antagonist instead of Toru. Because, you know, you've heard me talk about how much I like Jobin's philosophy and kind of personality and stuff, and how scary I thought Damo was. And then Toru's kind of just there. Like, it's funny to think that me and so many other people spent so long exerting so much energy being like, oh, main antagonist of Part 8, who's it gonna be? And it ends up being Toru. And I swear to God, I have, like, almost nothing to say about the dude. I like his design. His hair is cool. Wonder of You is a cool and very scary stand. His relationship with Yasuho is, like, kind of interesting, but also, like, kind of creepy, because, like, fucking Toru met her when she was, like, what, 8? And then started dating her 10 years later? Man, Toru needs to become a fucking YouTuber, man. But I don't know, when it comes to Toru, like, I kind of wonder if I would have liked the guy if he was introduced sooner. You know, he shows up in the hospital, like, towards the end. I don't know if I want to say necessarily, like, oh, he came out of nowhere, but I don't know. I just don't feel like there was enough build-up towards, like, Toru the person. Like, to compare him to his predecessor, Funny Valentine, like, Funny shows up not too late into the story. Shows up in chapter 25. So you can just spend a pretty good amount of time, like, with Funny, seeing him kind of interact with his subordinates, like, talk about his philosophy and what he wants to do. I'd kind of compare it to, like, imagine if Funny Valentine wasn't really mentioned until, like, the Civil War stuff, right? Like, you know how he shows up and he yoinks the corpse? Like, imagine if that was Funny's introduction. And it was just like, oh, I guess he's our bad guy. That's kind of how I feel about Toru. He kind of has this energy of like, oh, I guess he's the bad guy. I don't know where I would rank him among the kind of main antagonists. I feel almost nothing towards the guy, which I think you can make the argument when it comes to a villain. That's even worse than me just straight up not liking him. So yeah, Jojolion, man, it feels fucking weird being able to say that it's over. I definitely enjoyed it, but I would say it's definitely not one of my favorite parts. I think I need a little bit longer to like really decompress it all before I can kind of like finalize my opinion on it, but I enjoyed it. I think for me, it kind of suffers from this syndrome where like, I liked a lot of stuff in it, but I don't think I really loved too much about it, you know? Like, I can unequivocally say that I love Part 4 and Part 7. Whereas for this one, like, I thought the story was good. I thought the characters were good. There's a handful that I really like a lot. You know, Jobin is definitely up there. Damo is really cool. Yoshikage and Josefumi, I like them a lot. But beyond them, it's kind of just a lot of characters that I thought, yeah, you were okay. You were fine. But man, 10 years, dog. I'm definitely looking forward to Part 9. Like, when it comes to Part 9, I swear I'll make an actual effort to, like, read it every month. So yeah, here's to 25 years of JoJo Part 9. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.